lunging, just like you are working hand, you're riding him from the ground. So you don't have to push him forward too much yet. He's got to warm up. But if you look, he looks like he's got a nice... So this audio is not that great on this lesson, but I wanted to use it because it's the very first lunging session I'm having with Jeanne and her horse Gladiator. Gladiator is a standard bred rescue horse that was a harness racer and then an Amish buggy horse, and then he was nearly starved and he was on his way to slaughter when she found him. So he's been out in pasture recovering mentally and physically for the last few months. Now Jeanne is an enthusiastic beginner in Art2Ride, and she's very willing to do whatever Glad needs and however long he needs it, which is really wonderful. Obviously, having been driven in an overcheck rig, he has absolutely no top line and has no clue about stretching at this point, not to mention being extremely malnourished. You can see all of this just by looking at the poor guy. So our first lunging session was explaining to Jeanne that lunging is riding from the ground and really trying to get that concept. And today was about Jeanne working on keeping the contact with her lunge line and gently using her whip to keep Glad's hind legs more out on the circle, which I think she is doing a great job of. So as this is the very first time he's actually stretching down there, she stopped and rewarded him with a sugar cube, because really I was explaining to her that the first thing we need to do is communicate with him. And that's what I'm saying here, and you can't really hear it in the audio, that we have to communicate with him what we want. He doesn't know what she wants. He doesn't speak English. She has to find a way to let him know that's what we want. And that's what she did.
No, it's just to respond to the wind.
So as he happens to be recovering from an abscess in his right hoof on this day, so we did not ask for much activity, which was just as well, because really he really does not have a lot of strength physically at this point anyway. This was more about introducing the concepts to both Jeanne and to Glad, and the fact that as a standard bred harness puller for years he was able to relax enough to stretch at all, I thought was a good thing. We talked a lot about communication as the first step. He needs to understand what she wants. So I explained that as we go, we will add activity to this lunging, and then he'll begin to step under his body more with his inside hind leg, and that will lift his back, which will just naturally lengthen his neck. But for now, there's a lot of coordination going on, and as you can see, he is doing really quite well for the very first time on the lunge line, I think probably in his life, and for Jeanne as well, learning these new concepts. So we're taking baby steps here.
We're not going out the door. Go to position. Come on. Yeah, there's the camera. Say hi.
But then eventually you're going to use that line to sort of give and take and soften his jaw. You don't just... This is really great. He's doing so great. I'm so excited. Now he does that. Now when Glad starts to really focus on what's going on outside the ring here, I was talking to her about this. We want him to, I was explaining to her to use her line in a give and take way, as well as her whip, to get him more focused inwardly toward her, because what she needs to establish excuse me, in this bond of relationship that she's starting is trust, so that no matter what is going on around him, if he focuses on her, he can know he will be safe. So the idea that I was explaining to her when he kept looking outward was that he needs to focus on her. She needs to bring him back to her and get his attention, become bigger than whatever's going on around him that he is focusing on instead of her. And that's actually the beginning of the trust that these two will have in their new relationship.
Under his belly, the whole way around the circle. He's going to be like that. He's doing great. Your inside rein is going to give and take. The outside rein is going to stay steady. So it's a little tricky. You kind of have an outside rein and an
Inside rein.
But that's, yes, it's always give and take. He'd be happy to hang on the whole time, but you don't, then he'll run very excited. So it's give and take, give and take. So let's see if we do that.
You are so handsome. I'm in love with you. Don't get jealous.
Of a horse?
Okay.
So
Men should be
but
jealous.
when you give, it's never like that. It's never slack. It's always the way you
I'm trying to teach her the concept of give and take, softening the jaw, but not letting the line ever go slack. So it is a really subtle thing that I'm trying to explain. So as Glad goes by, you can see the way he is built and the muscles that he has been using and the muscles that he has not been using. The way that he's been worked is literally pulling his entire body with his chest. And that's the only way he knows to move. So that's what she's up against, and she's very aware of that. So that's why we're not trying to accomplish too much here in this first session. He's really got to heal still. He still has quite a bit of healing to do. He's got some weight to gain as well. But she can introduce these concepts at the walk, and I think it's just fine what she's doing, and we're planning on working on this a bit more. The next session, I'm sure that we'll be able to add more activity and get him stepping under, which he is doing there. Now see, here's where I was talking to her about get his focus inward. He's not listening to her right now. He's not paying any attention to her right now. And he needs to be able to soften his jaw toward her, but he also needs to be able to focus on the work. So that's all, and as soon as she gets his attention, he does that. So this was a beginning session, her very first one, his very first one, that I think really did accomplish a few things. I think it accomplished what her goals are going to be for the first few months here, and what our needs are, what his needs are as well. So one thing I really like about Jeanne is she's patient, and she knows this is going to take a long time. She is more than willing to do whatever it takes, however long it takes. And it's just a perfect match, these two, I think. Here's where I'm showing her that I thread the line up through my fourth finger and hold the line exactly like I hold my reins when riding. And that will help me to be able to finesse more like I do when I'm riding, and to translate riding and lunging better. It gives you a little bit more control, and it's just a nice way to hold the line. Here's where I'm explaining to her there's a certain place of stepping under with that inside hind that every horse has, that as soon as they step that far under, their back will come up. And so we have to find that for Glad. And I'm trying to show her here. She's got the whip. I'm trying to show her the contact of the lunge line so that she can focus on the whip, but we aren't quite getting it yet here. And so this would be where she would use the whip and get his haunches out more so that he could be on the same circle with his hind end as well as his forelegs. That's what I was trying to get her to do with the whip, so she wouldn't have to focus on both things at once. So right here she starts to use the whip to get him to step under, and he's pretty responsive actually. So that's more what we were going for there. And then we need to put it together so she can maintain the contact of the line and use the whip to get the haunches out at the same time. Then we'll add the activity in the next session. But this is plenty for her because she also needs to keep walking as well. And so that he can have a bigger circle, because this guy needs a big circle for now.
And sometimes you have to go like this, if it's too much, and then you can let it back out, and you just have to get, it's just a practice thing. Okay. So that it never changes, just like when you're going to do it Friday. You have to keep your
I'm explaining to Jeanne here that it's her job to keep the weight of rein on the line, just like it will be when she's riding. It's going to be her job to keep the contact in the reins so that he can't evade the contact by coming up and down. That as the horse moves, you have to adjust the reins and the lunge line to keep the length so that it's a weight of rein, like a straight line is what I'm saying. And sometimes you do that with the whip. If it's because his shoulder is coming in, then you can use the whip to keep his shoulder out. But that it's really a very dynamic thing. So now she's taking over and working on what I was just showing her. But she needs to get him to focus inward more. She needs to soften that jaw. Not bend his neck, but just soften that jaw and flex that pull toward her. In a give and take again. It's not holding him there, but in a give and take. It'll be a lot easier when we can get him more active and when we can use the whip more. But I thought today, since he's so weak, that today would be a good day to just really get the technique down on the line for her.
Soften the jaw. Don't use the whip, it's the jaw. Soften. Pull it toward you on one mat. Just gently on one mat. Right? Yeah, like that. Right. And then move it like that. Good. Yes, so he shouldn't look like he's walking away.
What I'm explaining here to her is to try to develop her eye, that it shouldn't look like he's walking away from her on the lunge line. If it looks like the horse is walking away, like away from her, that means that his haunches are inside the circle that his forelegs are on. So see how right now it's just constantly walking away from her. He's also not focusing on her. So that means she needs to get his haunches out more. And it's not so much that we're working on that today, but I wanted her to understand that what she's looking for is that the haunches are going to be on, for now, the same circle as the forelegs. But see, he's struggling right now. He's getting sore, so we're not going to do too much more. But and he's got hoof issues that she's working on as well. But the idea is to see the haunches on the same circle as the forelegs for starters. Then eventually we're going to push the haunches out, farther out on the circle, so that it's more like a shoulder in. This is what I'm talking to her about here, just so that she can start to develop her eye as to where she's going with this.
You're not doing yes. So which way do you like better on the direction?
I think I like this. Turn it.
And I'm explaining to her that for this guy, a bigger circle is going to be much easier for him to do at this point. So for her to walk with him. I need her to start walking more with him so that he can do a much bigger circle. That's what he needs at this point. So she needs to walk a bigger concentric circle at the same time. It's a lot. She's doing great. There's a whole lot of parts to this. And lunging is an art. So we're not working on everything today. We're just getting started on developing her eye, communication with Glad, and just understanding where we're going with it all.
But you have this on video, this way you're going to be able to see it. Is it videoing?
It's rolling.
So you're going to be able to see it. Yeah.
I need to move my leg a little bit.
So if I had a lunge or whip, I would do something. In fact, if you want me to. Yeah. So carefully, like, yeah, okay, you got the rest of them on. Yeah. I won't show you. This is the way I like it. Because the bigger a circle, the better for him. It's better for him to get out here. But if you have to be close, then you have to be close. See what you can get. Right in front of the camera. Up and forward. Good boy. Both of your upper arms generally should be at the side. Otherwise, you're going to
So now I've got the whip, and I'm showing her how to have, just to relax your arms at your sides. Your upper arms are at your sides, and my palm is up with that whip, and I'm just swinging it in a rhythmic way that he's very aware of, that will just get his haunches out just a little bit more, as well as keep him going. Again, we're not really pushing him today. I already can see that we don't have much more time before this guy wears out, as well as his attention span. But I'm trying to just show her how you would use the whip with him. It's underhanded and it's very rhythmic. And it's there if we need it, but we don't need it right now for anything other than this right now, just to keep him out on that circle. He's starting to look off here, so we're not going to go much longer, but I just wanted to show her how to put it all together.
But this right here, now for real. Upper arms are beside your body, and it's like this. So it's really good. And if he's going fast enough, then I think that if you do this, you're going to help his haunches.
Okay, yeah.
It's not so much the whip.
I feel like I can't keep him from coming in on me.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm constantly backing, feeling like I have to back up.
Okay, walk with him instead. Think of walk with him, but you're staying in between it. Pull him in, pull him in. He doesn't get to sightsee. He's working right now. So you just start walking.
So the problem she said she was having is that she feels like if she softens his jaw, his whole shoulder and body will come in. So I'm showing her that you actually use your whip for that. You don't have to even touch him. You just use the whip in that rhythmic, snaky way between me and the shoulder while you're softening the jaw. That will keep his shoulder from coming in. See, now he doesn't come in with his body, he just softens his jaw. So I'm showing her that you use the whip in conjunction with your softening his jaw right towards the shoulder there. Again, you're not even touching him, you're just rhythmically using it in front of, between you and the shoulder, and that will keep him from falling in as you're softening the jaw. And I'm telling her he doesn't get to sightsee. I keep saying that to her because he keeps just looking out the window there every time, and she keeps letting him. So that's one of the things we're working on.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, that looks good, right? And walk with him. Because the bigger the circle, the easier it will be for him. These older guys are really, little circles are very hard on their joints. Eventually, when you learn that, you can do them, but put your arm down, side you, right. Yeah. A little more contact in the line.
So I'm showing her there that actually getting those haunches out onto the circle is more important than whether he's stretching at this moment or not. And she's doing a great job. This is a lot of parts that she's taking in. She's got to remember to walk with him. She's got to remember to keep the weight of Rain on the line. She's got to remember to keep his haunches out and soften his jaw and keep his attention and keep walking and stand up straight and relax her arms. And I think Jeanne did a fabulous job for her first time doing this. And we're going to change direction here, but I'm not going to show that because we don't do too long on there because he starts to get off a little bit with that right
So, you know what?
front.
Let's not
So
exercise this way.
I think Jeanne did a fabulous job. This was her first session with Glad, and he's going to be really fun to watch.
Because I think